The early 90s was an exciting time period for music when alternative rock was reaching its peak of popularity, pumping out countless hits by bands such as Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and many others. Alternative rock is a genre of music that emerged from the underground music scene of the 80s and became widely popular by the 90s. The term alternative was used to describe punk rock-inspired bands that did not fit into the mainstream genres at the time. In May of 1993, the alternative rock band Soul Asylum created a song called Runaway Train, which would end up being one of the biggest hits of their career, winning the band a Grammy in 1994 for Best Rock Song. They would also receive 2 nominations for Best Rock Performance by a Group with Vocals and Best Music Video Short Form. The song became popular worldwide, reaching number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 2 on the US Top 40 Mainstream, and climbed to number 1 on the Canadian RPM Top Singles chart. The song was also in the top charts in several European countries. Runaway Train was written by the band's lead singer Dave Pirner, originally about the complexities of depression. But when the band created a music video for the song, they decided they wanted to make a social statement. It all started with an idea sparked from the milk cartons that displayed pictures of missing children. The band wanted to show pictures of real runaway and missing kids in their video. Several versions of the music video were made for different countries, with 3 versions made just for the US. In particular, the US version, directed by Tony Kaye, begins by saying there are over 1 million youth lost on the streets of America, and then cuts to various clips of the band members playing the song. They then show clips of children running away, some after being in abusive situations, or children being abducted, portraying possible real scenarios of many missing kids. Then the music video begins to flash several pictures of real missing children, followed by their names, along with the year they had been missing since. A total of 36 missing children were shown throughout the videos. Runaway Train received airtime regularly on MTV and VH1, and of those children shown in the video, 21 were reunited or made contact with their families after being recognized or deciding on their own to come home. One of those who came home on her own was 16-year-old Elizabeth Wiles. After living in California for 2 years, she was ready to go home. She missed her family and friends. She said she even missed school, but because she had been only 13 years old when she ran away from her Lamar, Arkansas home to hitchhike to San Diego with her then 18-year-old boyfriend, Elizabeth believed they couldn't go home again due to fear of her boyfriend getting in trouble. One day, Elizabeth was watching MTV at a friend's house when she happened to see the Runaway Train video and saw her own face pop up on the screen. She said she was so scared she couldn't even look and didn't feel any other emotions. Elizabeth ended up calling home and talking to her mom, where she apologized and they both began to cry. She then flew home to Arkansas a few weeks later, saying the video did what it intended to do. It brought her home. She's now 39 and lives with her husband outside of Nashville, where she is a real estate broker and a licensed contractor. Besides Wiles, other children have talked to their families by phone or asked authorities that they tell their parents they're okay. Unfortunately, some of the cases of the missing children in the videos have tragic endings where they were later found deceased or are still missing to this day. One of the youngest children shown in the video that's still considered missing is Thomas Dean Gibson, a 2.5-year-old who went missing from Azalea, Oregon in 1991. Thomas was last seen playing in the front yard of his family's residence at approximately 11:30 a.m. on March 18, 1991. Thomas's father, Larry, was ultimately named a prime suspect, with police claiming he accidentally shot Thomas while firing at a stray cat and then buried his son's body to cover up the crime. Larry maintains his innocence and believes his son was abducted. Age-progressed photos of him at age 19 and 24 were released by the ncmec, or National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Here are the other 11 children who are featured in the video, with 1 case being resolved and 10 still missing as of 2019. 14-year-old Curtis Huntzinger was at first considered runaway, but 10 years after he went missing, his case was changed to endangered missing. He went missing on May 19, 1990 from Blue Lake, California after leaving his family home. Finally, in December of 2008, a friend of the Huntzinger family, Stephen Daniel Hash, was arrested in connection with Curtis's disappearance. Hash told the investigators that at his home on the night of May 18th, after an argument broke out, he struck Curtis in the head with a dumbbell, crushing his skull and killing him. Hash led authorities to Curtis's body in a shallow grave on the outskirts of Blue Lake shortly after he confessed. Due to the statute of limitations, time had run out for a charge of voluntary manslaughter, but Hash was allowed to plead guilty for that charge, and in 2009, he received a sentence of 11 years. Curtis's mother, Nancy, was awarded $3.6 million for a wrongful death lawsuit more than 19 years after the death of her son. 14-year-old Damai Benoit was last seen at her home in Creole, Louisiana on July 23, 1992. She had just been released from the hospital with a shoulder injury, and she was wearing a hospital scrub gown and on pain medicine at the time. Her family said they left her at home for a period of time, and when they returned, she was gone and has never been heard from again. Authorities initially classified her case as runaway, but her family never believed she left on her own accord, and in 2005, the case was updated to missing endangered. 17-year-old Byron Page disappeared from a bus stop in Los Angeles, California on January 29, 1992. He had been planning to take the bus from his house to a music store about 20 miles away where he frequently traveled. Byron never returned home, and employees said they don't recall him entering the business that day. His parents called police to report him missing, but police said there wasn't much they could do for the first 24 hours. Los Angeles County Detective Diane Harris said Byron had never hinted he wanted to leave home, so he was not considered a runaway. Byron wasn't having any problems prior to his disappearance. He was very happy with his life and looking forward to getting his driver's license. He was an excellent student with a perfect attendance record, and he had been accepted at several colleges. Foul play is suspected in his disappearance. 17-year-old Christopher Kersey said he was sick with a fever and a headache the day he went missing on April 20, 1990, from his home in Eagan, Minnesota. According to his family, he had stayed home from school and they left him alone while they went to work. When they returned home, Chris and the family's blue Dodge Caravan was missing, and a letter was left on the counter stating Chris would be back by 6 unless he got lost, with the word lost underlined twice on the note. The Caravan was found 1 week later, abandoned 20 miles from his home, and police believe he left on his own accord. Apparently, shortly after he went missing, the family had received a handwritten letter postmarked about 160 miles away, written in Christopher's handwriting. The message appeared to be a suicide note where the teenager explained he had faked his sickness to gain access to the family's vehicle, and after using it to get away, he was planning on ending his own life. Soon after the Kerseys had received the letter, their youngest son noticed his dad's shotgun had disappeared, yet the ammunition sitting next to the spot where the gun was kept was not taken. In 2004, an anonymous letter was received by the Eagan Police Department suggesting they should stop trying to find Chris and he would return home when he is ready, but the police were unable to authenticate the communication. 15-year-old Martha Dunn went missing from her family's home in Daingerfield, Texas on September 5, 1990. She had been visiting relatives in Oklahoma when her parents brought her back home to Texas on September 4th to start the school year. For that reason, Martha was unhappy and she argued with her parents. The last time they saw her was around 2:20 p.m., then at approximately 10 p.m., she spoke on the phone with her 17-year-old boyfriend, Eric Owens. The next day, both Martha and Eric were gone. There was a theory that the couple had traveled to Hayworth, Oklahoma, where Eric's aunt lived, as there were several reported sightings of the pair there, but Eric's aunt denied those claims. Another theory was that they had gone to Kansas, possibly to the Wichita area where Eric's mother lived, but that theory has not been confirmed. Then a few weeks after their disappearance, Martha's father got a call from a friend in Oklahoma. The friend said he had seen Martha and Eric together and they were dirty and hungry, so he cleaned them up and gave them food. But when police went to investigate the report, they couldn't find the couple. Eric and Martha were both heavily involved with drugs at the time they went missing, and it's possible their disappearances were drug-related. However, there is no evidence of foul play, and police continue to believe they left on their own accord. 13-year-old Andrea Durham was last seen on February 1, 1990, at her family's residence in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, which she shared with her mother and older sister. Her mother and sister left, asking her to finish her homework and vacuum while they were gone. When Andrea's family returned to their residence 2 hours later, they found it unlocked with no indication of forced entry. Andrea's purse, clothes, makeup, and all other personal belongings were undisturbed inside, and the vacuum cleaner was standing upright in the living room, which her sister said was unusual because it would always be put away when they were finished. Agencies initially classified Andrea's case as that of a runaway or a possible non-family abduction. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance remain unclear, and there is very little evidence as to what happened. Andrea had to change schools and move to a new apartment, which she was unhappy about, which was part of the reason investigators believe she had run away. She had also gotten into trouble with the law by acting as a lookout for other children while they stole money out of vehicles. She was sentenced to community service for her role, but her sister stated Andrea wasn't very worried about it. All of the charges against her have since been voided. Authorities now believe other forces may have been at work in her disappearance. 14-year-old Andrea Bowman was last seen in Hamilton, Michigan on March 11, 1989. She was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and was placed for adoption at 5 months old. After a period in foster care, she was adopted by Dennis Bowman and his wife a few months before her second birthday. In the fall of 1988, Andrea started refusing to go home from school, and she told the staff that Dennis was molesting her, so the staff at the school called the police. Dennis was already on parole at the time for an unrelated offense in 1980, where he had attempted to kidnap a teenage girl so he could assault her. He was released from prison in 1986. A truant officer and a social worker went to the Bowman residence to confront Andrea's adoptive parents with the allegations, but they said Dennis had not abused her and that Andrea had problems because she had recently found out she was adopted. Shortly afterwards, Dennis moved the family to a trailer in an isolated area where Andrea would ultimately disappear. Her last confirmed location was reported by Dennis, who said she'd stolen some money from the house before she left. After Andrea's disappearance, her adoptive parents quickly moved away from the trailer. Investigators believe that she left on her own accord, but her birth mother has stated that she believes foul play may have been involved in her daughter's disappearance. 16-year-old Kimberly Doss was living in Houston, Texas at the time of her disappearance. There are different dates listed on several different websites of when Kimberly disappeared, with one article stating that on September 27, 1982, she was seen at a Greyhound bus station in Davenport, Iowa. She had taken the bus from Houston to Davenport to her father's house, but she never arrived, and her family never heard from her again. Another website says her aunt stated Kimberly had been missing as early as March of 1980. Then a charitable organization called Thursday's Child, which assists homeless or at-risk teenagers, claims they made contact with Kimberly in 1984. They stated Kimberly was working as a prostitute on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood, California, under a pimp named James Wiseman. She had straight, bleach blonde hair and was using the name Kimberly Gardner, but she was approximately 4 inches taller than she was said to be in the missing persons report. Her mother did not believe the Hollywood woman was her daughter, and investigators did not look into that lead any further. Several years passed before investigators decided Kimberly Gardner and Kimberly Doss were probably the same person, but by that time, Gardner was no longer in Hollywood. She hasn't been seen again and has never been identified as Kimberly Doss. 15-year-old Duane Watchman disappeared from downtown Lincoln City, Oregon on July 22, 1986. Authorities classified him as endangered runaway, believing he left of his own accord. He was last seen wearing a black jacket, jeans, and possibly a stud earring. He was last known to be 5'5" and 130 pounds, but few other details are available in his case. 18-year-old John Lango was last seen leaving his home in Pottsville, Pennsylvania at midnight on January 1, 1988. His younger brother says John was drinking with a friend that night, but at one point the friend became belligerent, so the police were called and came to arrest him. John then said, quote, "Screw this, I'm out of here," unquote, then walked down the street. His brother followed him and saw a car roll up next to John, who then got in the car. The brother was only 10 years old at the time and doesn't remember the make or color of the car. John was wearing blue jeans, a gray jacket, and sneakers, and he has a burn scar on his upper left arm. He is 6'1" and 185 pounds. Few other details are available in his case as well. 11-year-old Patrick Betts was last seen on January 20, 1988, near the Pizza Chalet on Foothill and Usledge Streets in Upland, California. It was said he spent time in the pizza parlor playing video games with an unidentified juvenile, and he was reportedly seen leaving with that same person. Patrick's mother said he told her that he was going to a basketball game with a friend at Upland High School, which there was a basketball game that night, but it was in Chino and not in Upland. Patrick's parents waited for him all night, but he never came home, so the next morning they reported him missing. Patrick was last seen wearing a gray shirt, gray pants, and white shoes, and he has a skin discoloration on his left jawline near his chin. The Runaway Train music video that was shown in Australia showed a number of young backpacking tourists who had gone missing and whose families were desperately looking for. Many of those shown in the Australian version were confirmed victims of serial killer Ivan Milat, who was arrested in 1994. There are several other backpackers that went missing in the same area who are believed to be victims of Milat but have never been confirmed. The killer, now known as the Backpacker Killer, was sentenced in 1996 to 7 consecutive life sentences for murdering the 7 backpackers. All were killed in horrific circumstances after Milat picked them up hitchhiking, and their bodies were found in makeshift graves covered with branches and leaves in the Belanglo State Forest between September 1992 and November 1993. The victims were Melbourne couple 19-year-old Deborah Everest and 19-year-old James Gibson, German traveler 21-year-old Simone Schmiedel, German couple 20-year-old Anja Habschied and 21-year-old Gabor Neugebauer, and British friends 22-year-old Joanne Walters and 21-year-old Caroline Clark. One victim was decapitated, another shot 10 times in the head. Many were stabbed so savagely their bones were chipped, and some had been gagged or bound. In May of 2019, Ivan Milat was diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer after tests found lumps in his throat and stomach. Then, on October 27, 2019, Milat died of his illness. If interested, I highly suggest watching a documentary on Ivan Milat to learn more information about his crimes. In May of 2019, 2.5 decades since the release of Dave Pirner's Runaway Train music video, a remake was released just before National Missing Children's Day, which is on May 25th. Sung by the artists Jamie N. Commons, Skylar Grey and Gallant, it's a more modern pop version but still has the same message to help bring home runaway and missing children. The music video was recently nominated for Best Video with a Social Message at the 2019 MTV Video Music Awards, and it's being considered the milk carton of the 21st century. This time, the video begins by saying every year there are over 400,000 reports of missing children in the United States. An interesting thing about the remake, called Runaway Train 25, is that the video uses geolocation technology, so when you watch the video, it automatically updates itself with the profiles of missing children from the ncmec database based on your location to show you more missing person cases relevant to your area. If you'd like to see the missing children from your area, please visit runawaytrain25.com and spread the word with family and friends. The site will have interactive features to make it easier to search for and report a missing child's location, in addition to many other features, such as being able to search through a list of unidentified Jane or John Does, and to learn more about or donate to the ncmec. Runaway Train 25 has already helped locate a runaway 16-year-old girl from Minneapolis, Minnesota. After watching the music video and recognizing her, one of the girl's friends identified her and reached out and was able to persuade her to return home. Those who watch the video are encouraged to share the video on Twitter and other social media platforms using hashtag missingkids and hashtag runawaytrain25 to help publicize cases and aid the search for missing children across the country. Social media leads and tips for the ncmec have increased by 65% since the video's launch. According to the ncmec, in 2018, they assisted law enforcement and families with more than 25,000 cases of missing children, with 92% being endangered runaways, 4% family abductions, 3% critically missing young adults aged 18 to 20, and less than 1% being non-family abductions or lost, injured, or otherwise missing children. Of the more than 23,500 runaways reported to the ncmec in 2018, 1 in 7 were likely victims of child sex trafficking, with many resorting to living on the streets and falling prey to drugs. If anyone has any information for any of the cases, you are urged to contact the TIP hotline at 1-800-THE-LOST or 1-800-843-5678. ncmec's campaign emphasizes that it only takes one person to recognize a child or teen from a photo and help bring him or her home safely. Once again, if anyone has any information for any of the cases, you are urged to contact the TIP hotline at 1-800-THE-LOST or 1-800-843-5678.